Oregon's going to need a lot of secondary help in 2025. And there's a guy at Arizona that fits the mold.
You are Locked On Ducks, your daily podcast on the Oregon Ducks. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, it is that time once again for Locked On Ducks. I'm your host, Spencer McLaughlin. Thank you so much for making this your first listen or your first view of the day. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day and your number one source to stay up to date with the Ducks. This episode brought to you by friends at Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code Locked On College for $20 off your first purchase. Do those things in that order. Tacario Davis, the transfer cornerback from Arizona, would be a Jabbar Muhammad type of guy for the Ducks. Plus, will there be coaching turnover on the horizon for Dan Lanning, as is often the case? And is there an upside to Oregon's seemingly more difficult playoff path? That is all coming up today, but Tacario Davis is up first. So, I talked about the Purdue safety, Dylan Thieneman, on yesterday's show, and at the safety position, that's kind of a perfect fit. Tacario Davis would be a pretty darn perfect fit for Oregon. Second team All-Big 12, 3-year player at Arizona. Was not a super highly rated guy coming out of high school, but has spent the time down in Tucson developing under a couple different coaching staffs. Second team All Big 12, second team All Pac 12, RIP, in 2023. This is a guy who very much feels to me like Jabbar Muhammad. Now, interestingly enough, for those of you that use Pro Football Focus, he has not graded as high as he did last year. His grade is actually in the 60s, which is below what you'd consider to be a good player. 70 is good, 80 is great, 90 is holy smokes, how are you this good at football, and when are you going to the NFL draft? 60 and below is, the guy is probably not playing at a high-end starter sort of level. I don't take PFF grades as the be-all, end-all. They are, however, a data point. They're not just making things up over there. So in 2023, this is a guy whose PFF grade was 84, and this year it's fallen into the low 60s, down at 61. So you make that whatever you like. The Big 12 coaches who hadn't seen him the year before when he was on the Pac-12 Arizona Wildcats still voted him second team All Big 12. So a guy with multiple years of starting experience who is not necessarily a born to be first round NFL draft pick at the cornerback position, but has got really good ball skills and has got a track record of being a solid to above average starting capable corner. That screams Jabbar Muhammad to me. The interesting thing about Tacario Davis, Arizona's website lists him at 6'4". Now, coming out of high school, he was 6'2". Did he put on 2 inches? I don't know. Regardless, this is not exactly a Nico Reed, Roderick Pleasant type where he is shorter and probably fits better in the slot. But Nico Reed, of course, has played a lot of outside corner this year and has been really, really good. Most notably, the game's sealing interception against Penn State in the Big Ten championship game. So Davis makes a lot of sense from a trait standpoint. He's seen as someone who could be an early round NFL draft pick. So you could think of Christian Gonzalez here as well, who was going to get drafted when he was at Colorado, transfers to Oregon, plays his way into being a first round pick. That's what Tacario Davis could be. I think he is one of those guys. And let's first of all note that Texas is seen as the leader for Davis's services. They might have a bit of an advantage. Johnny Nansen is the defensive line coach at Texas. He was the defensive coordinator at Arizona the year before. So there is a connection there that Oregon would have to overcome. But this is a guy who would be a really good fit because this secondary is going to look entirely different. I can't think of a year. You guys can maybe help me out, but off the top of my head, I can't think of a year in which there are going to be this many new faces in Oregon secondary. First of all, Dante Manning won't be there. He has been, I think he was hurt in 2020 or didn't play a whole heck of a lot as a true freshman. But Dante Manning has been in Oregon secondary for a hot minute. He's done after this season. That's not even Oregon's cornerback one. Jabbar Muhammad, he's going to the NFL draft. Nico Reed, he's out of eligibility. Tysheem Johnson, he's out of eligibility. Kobe Savage, he's out of eligibility. Brandon Johnson, he's out of eligibility. So for those of you that were just counting all the players I've mentioned so far, Oregon is losing not just their top 2 corners, or 3, or 4, or 5. The top 6 guys you would currently place as starters or high-end rotation players on Oregon's secondary depth chart, they're all gone after the season. So, is there a lot of talent in the secondary room behind these guys? Absolutely. Is there a lot of experience there? No, there is not. There's a couple snaps. I mean, we saw Sione Laulea have an interception in garbage time against Illinois. That was Illinois' starting quarterback. And I think they still have the first team offense out there. Maybe they see him as somebody who is ready to start in 2025. Or a guy like Cam Alexander, who many people, myself included, maybe thought was going to be a starter this season given the profile he had coming over from UTSA as an all-conference player. He's not on the regular two-deep rotation. Maybe he works his way up. But no matter how much talent you've got in that room, or guys like Dalen Austin, who made a play on special teams in the Big Ten title game, downing that punt inside the 5-yard line, or Roderick Pleasant, who's seen the field from time to time and could be poised for a larger role next year. No matter which of those guys you look at or how many you've got in that room, I would be shocked, not surprised. I would be shocked if all 5 of Oregon's starting secondary members next year are currently on the roster. And when I say starting 5, I'm not even including guys who are first off the bench, who we have seen play big roles in the last 2 seasons, whether that's Dante Manning on Saturday or throughout this year or a season ago. It was Triquez Bridges and Nico Reed, who at one point, because of injuries, were on the field during the Pac-12 championship game at the same time. So this is a room that needs to be tremendously deep. And right now, when you look around at experience, it's lacking. Do they want to promote some young guys in a sense and give them the opportunity? And, they've been coaching, developing them for the last couple seasons after recruiting them. Yes, I do suspect that will happen. I don't think they want to go with 5 guys who have not taken starter snaps before. You got no leader in that room. You got no alpha in that room. No guy that 100% is going to produce at the sort of level that this Oregon secondary needs to next season. I don't think Dan Lanning and company take that risk. How many? That's what's going to be fascinating to watch how it plays out in the transfer portal and in the spring as well. This will be a big subject of discussion in the offseason on this very show and others like it as well, because I can't remember a year where Oregon lost their top 6 defensive backs, but they're all done. They're all out of eligibility. I had to do a triple check when looking that stuff up because of the COVID year, but they're all done. So you got a lot to replace. And bringing in a Tacario Davis, who would be this year's Jabbar Muhammad or Christian Gonzalez, would make a lot of sense, because you could put him in and just know, okay, we don't need to worry about that one. That side of the field, that position, we're good. We're good. It's all done. We know that guy's going to be able to play. That's why it would make a lot of sense. He's not the only name, per se, that would make sense. Oregon has reportedly reached out to Georgia cornerback Julian Humphrey, I believe is his first name. But that, again, doesn't make as sense as Davis would. Texas is seen as the leader. Oregon, I'm sure, will try to get into the fold, or at least I think that they should. Let me know your thoughts in the YouTube comments, or hit me up on Twitter at SMcLaughlinCFB or at Locked On Ducks. DMs and mentions always wide open. Are there going to be changes on the coaching staff? Yes, but not in the place that you probably expected. That's coming up next. Right after we talk about Game Time, which has Game Time picks. You know what that does? It makes getting tickets to see your favorite teams play live even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Curation makes it easier to save more on, everything that you want to go see. Sports, concerts, comedy, which I'm a huge fan of, theater, etc. Everything they've got is anything that you could need. And they give you panoramic views from your seat in that before you buy. This was a deciding factor in picking where I would sit for the Big Ten championship game after I found out I wasn't going to be in the press box. And guess what? Game Time made this whole process incredibly easy to navigate. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time Picks. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE. That's LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game Time. Should you expect staff shakeups for Oregon after the season they're having? Yes, absolutely. Is it going to take place where you think it might, probably not. So, Matt Prame of 24/7 Sports had the first tweet that I saw yesterday saying that Rashad Samples, Oregon's newly minted running backs coach from this season, as in this is his first year in Eugene, is reportedly a candidate, and a serious one, to be the head coach at Sam Houston. So I'll talk about that in just a moment. But the two guys that are at the top of everyone's minds when it comes to staff changes are Will Stein, Tosh Lupoi, offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator. There are plenty of job openings out there. There have been plenty. I have not seen either one of those guys' names tied to either one. Doesn't mean it can't happen either this cycle or next cycle or the cycle after that. It's an incredibly unpredictable world out there. But when you have the sort of season that Oregon is having, and you are running the sort of program that Dan Lanning has developed in Eugene in a pretty short amount of time, you're going to attract plenty of attention. Just a fact of the matter, Alabama's assistants and coordinators got poached all the time. But right now, it doesn't feel like there is a pressing urgency for Will Stein to find a head coaching opportunity. And I've never gotten the sense throughout his entire career that Tosh Lupoi wants to be a head coach. There's never been a strong indication that he wants to be a head coach. And some guys are okay being coordinators. And you know what? There's nothing wrong with that. Gary Campbell was Oregon's running backs coach for, I think, over 30 years. Spanned several coaching staffs. He was just there. Probably had offers or interest, got phone calls or emails to be an offensive coordinator. Some guys are okay. I like my job. I got this responsibility. My life is here. I got a 6-figure salary. It's all good. Some guys are okay with that. Hard to blame them. And by the way, the offensive defensive coordinators at Oregon, they're making more than a 6-figure salary. So with regards to Rashad Samples, the other name that you will hear get tossed out, and I talked about at one point on the show in the last few weeks, is Chris Hampton. So Hampton was the defensive coordinator at Tulane, came to Oregon ahead of last season, and is in the process of wrapping up, hopefully with 3 more wins, his second season with the Ducks as the co-defensive coordinator. That to me is another name that I think will move on from Oregon before either of the coordinators do, unless Will Stein finds a head coaching opportunity this offseason. But for now, those guys are not generating a ton of buzz, but Rashad Samples very much is. So he's seen as one of the favorites for the Sam Houston job. And I got a question from somebody about, why would you go to Sam Houston when you're at Oregon? Oregon's a better school. Oregon's a bigger brand. Oregon can offer all this, that, and the other thing. The answer is, if you have desires to be a head coach, you're not going to get that at Oregon, right? Do you anticipate the Oregon job coming open soon? I know the Bears need a head coach, and I'm super worried about Dan Lanning taking that job. Gosh, what a bunch of ridiculousness. But guys that come through Oregon on the coaching staff side of things, most of them are mercenaries. This doesn't mean they dislike Oregon. Does Kenny Dillingham feel like he dislikes Oregon? No, he went to Arizona State. How's he doing, by the way? Quite well. He's doing quite well. And by the way, I love Dilly. Dilly. I have been rooting for that guy ever since he got there. He cares about the place. He is incredibly passionate. He's a darn good coach. He does it the right way. He is a great guy across the board. He's a total stud. He was at Oregon for 1 year. And when he went to Arizona State and was in the middle of that 3-9 season, bet you could have looked at him and said, see, you should have stuck it out at Oregon. Oregon's playing in the Pac-12 championship game. You think Kenny Dillingham's got any regrets about going down to Arizona State? That's a place that's been dubbed a sleeping giant for a long time. Sam Houston plays in Conference USA. That's a significant step down in competition. So why would Samples make that move? Well, number one, he's got ties to the state of Texas, which is where Sam Houston is, because his dad is the coach at Duncanville. Remember, that was the connection with the tinfoil hats we were all wearing when DeCorian Moore was getting recruited to Oregon. And heck, that might have been a significant part of it. We'll never know 100% for sure. It's reasonable to infer there was a contact or a phone call made at some point in time. But if you have the opportunity to go prove yourself as the head coach, if your goal in the long run, if you're Rashad Samples, is to be a head coach of the Power 4 ranks, being a head coach in Conference USA is a much better way to get there than being the running backs coach for Oregon. And by the way, you know who just went from Conference USA to the Power 4 ranks? Rich Rodriguez, Jacksonville State to West Virginia. So when you get the opportunity, I understand where you come from, Oregon fans, but remember, these coaches, they can become Oregon fans, of course, and they are very much invested in Oregon's success while they are on campus. Most of them are not growing up diehard Oregon fans like Tez Johnson. Most of them see Oregon as a great place, as a great opportunity, but don't have that personal connection to where, oh, they'd never leave. You'd never leave if you got there. If I got a job with Oregon, I'd probably never leave. I mean, heck, I've got this show. I don't think I'm ever going to leave. I mean, I love this stuff. So the opportunity to be a head coach is better for him professionally than being a running backs coach at Oregon. So I got that question. I wanted to explain that thought. But I also got a question from Mark. And again, YouTube comments, Twitter, or if you want priority access and a bunch of other perks, go become a Locked On Ducks insider. Link in the description below. You can get a free 14-day trial. Then it's just $5 a month. So Mark sent in this question. Curious what your thoughts are on this. With an offense and defense that have both been clicking at times and looked very elite this season, do you think there's a risk we could lose Stein or Lupoi to a head coaching position? Sure seems like that time of year when rumors would start circulating, and I guess I'm just surprised I haven't heard anything like that. Thanks again for the great coverage, and as always, go Ducks. Yes, indeed, go Ducks. So going back to these two guys, Stein is far more likely to be a head coach one day than Tosh Lupoi. Stein is a lot younger. Stein is seen as an up-and-comer, went UTSA, now at Oregon, having a lot of success. Hopefully he coordinates Oregon's offense to a national championship. He's got a Heisman finalist each of the last 2 years. These are feathers in his cap that draw a lot of attention from schools across the country. The question he's going to ask himself is which job is the right one for his first head coaching opportunity? Because when you've been a coordinator at a Power 4 level, you can jump off and be a head coach somewhere. Heck, could be at a Power 4 school, could be at a high-level Group of 5 school. But which sort of opportunity is he most dead set on taking, if he is? I presume that he is. I don't know that personally. I haven't talked to the guy before. But guys that fast track to a high-level position like that, like Kenny Dillingham, rarely lack the aspiration to be a head coach. Sometimes they do. Sometimes they do. Right now, it could be a matter of Stein hasn't seen any jobs that he feels like are a great opportunity for him, or that he would be interested in, or that he and his wife, who have, I think, 2 kids now, would want to go and pursue. That's certainly a consideration, because for a lot of coaches early in their careers, they have to take a particular job and they don't get to care about location because, well, the money is just so much better. Will Stein's family is doing just fine. He's plenty well compensated, so he doesn't have to take that consideration. Heck, depending on which head coaching opportunity he gets, it could be a downgrade in pay. Probably not. Probably not, unless he were to take like a really low-level FBS job or an FCS head coaching job, which I doubt. But again, that's not a consideration he has to make. For him, he has to line up what's the right job. For Tosh Lupoi, I just don't think he wants to be a head coach. I never see his name. He's been in college football for a long time, since 2012. I've never seen his name consistently or seriously pop up on lists for potential coaching vacancies. So, yes, some jobs have opened and been filled, like Purdue with Barry Odom coming from UNLV. The UNLV job gets filled by Dan Mullen, the former Florida head coach. Bill Belichick's at North Carolina. Red flags all over the place for me on that one. So a lot of the jobs have been filled, but not every coaching vacancy that we're aware of is yet even open. Remember, UCLA came open last year late in the cycle because Chip Kelly left. UCLA fans didn't like that very much. Kind of understandable. But you don't know what's going to happen after the season, what Nick Saban left after the season. It's an unpredictable world out there. Corey asks, another perspective on our defensive woes in our inaugural Big Ten championship win. After such a phenomenal performance the previous week where they continually took the Huskies out to the woodshed, recording 10 sacks, etc., this ended up being a trap game for the defense as they put their all into the Husky game. What are your thoughts? I think they were just playing a better offensive line, didn't have a good day, and the scheme did them in. That's the most likely outcome. Yes, for fans, that Washington game was a big emotional investment to go and get a blowout win. And for the players at some extent too, emotional letdowns are the Ohio State game. You got a rushing the field component, top 5 matchup. Like that game had all the hype in the world. This one against Washington was hyped up because it was Dan Lanning has to win Oregon has to win, that doesn't give you the same feeling at the end of it. And by the way, players could tell you whatever they want in an interview setting. They know. They understand the stake. They hear that sort of stuff. They get asked the questions, and it can stay in their head. It absolutely, they're absolutely aware of that. Like, why did they need to win that game? Because they lost the last 3 by a combined 9 points, 3 points apiece. That's why. Not because Washington is this great team where they need to prove they can play with the best in all of college football. That was Ohio State. That's more of an emotional letdown. So I don't think it was the trap game as much as it was Penn State's offensive line, really good. Like, I went back and watched the game again, or rather watched extended highlights of it again, specifically the Penn State offense. Their offensive line is really good and really well coached, and they played incredibly well. And then scheme-wise, Oregon was just off balance a lot of the game. That's why I don't think there was a trap game component, though I understand where you're coming from. If you have questions leading into the first round playoff games next week, drop them in the YouTube comments, Twitter, whatever. Become a Locked On Ducks Insider. You can do all of those things. This playoff path for Oregon is not as favorable as it is for others. And Dan Lanning has said all the right things. Is there an upside, though, for Oregon fans that this path is tougher? That's coming up next. First, a reminder, this episode brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. That's a pretty sweet deal. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, you can view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. Do you want to make bowl season even more interesting? They've got college football. They've got all the lines you can want. Money line, point spread, over, under. Go spice it up. I love bowl season as is. Some of you might love it even more if you use FanDuel.com. $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet at FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. So January 1st at the Rose Bowl, Oregon faces the winner of Ohio State and Tennessee, which takes place next Saturday, December 21st. A couple questions came in. This one from Chad. If Oregon wins it all, will it be the greatest college... Or no, sorry. Let me rephrase here. This is a declarative statement. If Oregon wins it all, it will be the greatest college football season of all time. Change my mind. I will. The number of games, the opponents we will have to beat, non-biased, greatest season of all time. Go ahead. Change my mind. Okay. So if you're talking... that cold lingering around for a little voice crack there. Love to hear that. Love to hear that. If you're talking greatest season of all time, it would be the most games ever won in a college football season. From that standpoint, it is true. Oregon is 13-0. If they win their next 3 games and win the national championship, they'd be 16-0. I don't believe there has been a 16-0 college football team before. The greatest season, though? Probably not. Because would it be up there? Of course. Of course. It'd be on par with Michigan's season a year ago. A great year, a really good team, definitely worthy of being the national champion. So the reason I pull back on that is the greatest season to have a national championship of all time in college football probably includes the greatest team. And has Oregon played a quality schedule this year? Yes. Illinois, top 20 win. Boise State, top 10 win. Ohio State, top 10 win. Penn State, top 10 win. That's a pretty darn good lineup of teams. Let me read you what LSU in 2019, which for my money is the greatest college football team of all time. Here's who they played. They played at 9th-ranked Texas. They played then 7th-ranked Florida, then 9th-ranked Auburn, at 3rd-ranked Alabama, 4th-ranked Georgia in the SEC championship game. By the way, in that SEC title game, they beat Georgia 37-10. Georgia was 1 year removed from being the national runners-up in college football. They go to the college football playoff semifinal. They play number 4 Oklahoma and thrash them into oblivion, 63-28. I believe they had 49 points in the first half. Then in the national championship game, Trevor Lawrence led Clemson 42-25. Now, we haven't seen what Oregon's going to do in the postseason just yet. But I'm going to take a guess, just a guess, and say that Oregon's schedule this year won't stack up to that one. But would it stack up to any other national championship season? 100%. And this is the upside that Oregon fans should look at. If you're frustrated at the college football playoff system, which is completely screwy and dumb, it absolutely is. Dan Lanning and the players have said all the right things. I think they can use that as a motivating factor, and we've seen Dan Lanning do that time and again on Ducks versus them. Got no reason to believe he can't do it again here. We on the outside, though, can look at the reality of, hey, by the playoff committee's own rankings, not seeding, own rankings, Oregon is getting a tougher draw by playing Tennessee or Ohio State instead of one of the teams that barely got in the second round. Now, does that mean Oregon can't win all? No, they cannot. But the upside there for Oregon fans is if they win their next 3 football games, no one's ever going to be able to have any legitimacy to come at you with, well, it was an easy path. Well, you just skated on through. Nope. That argument doesn't hold any weight whatsoever. It's a small thing. It's a jab at fans and bars, but guess what? I imagine a lot of you have those interactions in person with friends or on Twitter. So that argument will not come out about from anyone. At the end of the day, it's the end result that matters the most. They tried to take down Michigan last year with the whole Connor Stallions thing. While they definitely broke the rules, they did not go so far to where I believe they were not deserving of winning the national championship. So that's, at the end of the day, what Michigan gets to look back and say is, hey, national championship. So whether it was an easy path or a hard path or how you view this, that, and the other thing, Oregon fans aren't going to care. Win the national championship and everything will be great. But there's still a long ways to go for that. This question to end today's show from JMCDO3. Game planning for 2 opponents, Ohio State or Tennessee, is far easier than 8. So I'm not sure reseeding after the first round is best. I disagree. Can you talk about the advantage Oregon will have with a 3.5 weeks of preparation versus 1.5 of preparation our opponent will have in the quarterfinals? With 3.5 weeks, the Ducks staff can game plan for both teams. Go Ducks. Absolutely. That is an upside that, frankly, I hadn't even pondered a ton until I read this question. And then I really did sit and think about it and go, yeah, Dan Lanning having time to prepare has been pretty darn good. How's Oregon looked off a bye so far this year? They beat UCLA handily. They were up 21-3 in the second quarter. They beat Washington 49-21. They went on a 21-0 run at one point in the game. Or I think it was a 21-0 run in the second quarter. Had a 21-point second quarter. You get what I'm going for. Oregon was ready to play. They were rested. They were ready to go. And they had everything looked at. So that comes down, I think, most importantly, to some small things that teams want to do. So, for example, the Washington game. Extra time to prepare. Maybe this comes out if it's a normal week of prep, and maybe it doesn't. But after Noah Whittington fumbled against Washington, what did the Huskies try to do? They tried to pull an Idaho. First play after a big turnover, go with the trick play, toss, reverse, back to the quarterback to throw. Oregon completely took it away. They were ready for it. Those are the little details, coaching-wise, and adjustments throughout the game that I think this staff have excelled at this season, and I think those come about through having plenty of time to prepare, and this is the most time they'll have ever had to prepare for a football game. The most time, and by the way, when Oregon lost the Pac-12 championship game a year ago and played a Liberty team that certainly was outmatched in the trenches in a number of ways, Oregon, first drive of the game, gives up a touchdown because Liberty's offense had some good things schemed up and Oregon missed a couple things, and then Oregon won the game 45-6. So when this staff has had that much time, they look like they have made good use of it. So you'll have time to pay attention to tiny details on special teams, on offense, work on new plays, new concepts, all sorts of things. That bye is absolutely an advantage. Yes, the matchup for whoever they're going to play is tougher, but the first round bye means something because you can't get your guys hurt, you can't get your guys tired either, and you get the opportunity to work more on the other team. So yes, that is certainly an advantage, and I hear you on the reseeding point, but would Oregon have a better time or an easier time beating Ohio State or Tennessee off 3.5 weeks, or if they only had 2 weeks beating SMU? I think SMU is a pretty good team. Once you get on the field, plenty of things you prepare for, plenty of things you practice don't even come out. Because you might be waiting for a certain look by the defense to call a play that you worked on several times at practice that week. But if that look never arrives, you might never call it. So I'd say that it's easier to have an opponent that is not as strong than it is to have more time to prepare for an opponent who is superior and also is going to have more than a regular time to prepare, right? Is Ohio State and Tennessee play on December 21st, and then the Rose Bowl is January 1st. Well, that's still more than a week's time. It's certainly not as much as Oregon's going to have. But yes, you're going to have the coaching staffs getting ready for both and being ready for that. But what does Dan Lanning say all the time? It's Oregon versus Oregon. That's the biggest opponent every week. That's what Oregon's working on first. What did I talk about earlier this week with regards to the defense? They couldn't handle motion. They couldn't handle tempo and formation shifts. They struggle with that against Penn State. You don't need to know who you're playing to work on those things, to shore up your communication defensively on the back end. So I see where you're coming from. Absolutely. I just don't happen to agree. I think Oregon, with 2 weeks' time against SMU, has an easier time winning the football game than 3.5 weeks' time against Ohio State or Tennessee. Appreciate everyone listening. I will see you next time. And until then, have a wonderful rest of your day and go Ducks.